the return of PvP, a major clan update, plugins, leagues, all in RuneScape 3? Well, these are possibilities that could actually be coming to RuneScape 3 in the future, as Jagex are asking about them in their newest survey, which I will link in the description down below, and I would highly recommend you fill it out. It will take about 30 minutes, but they want to know our opinion on all sorts of topics, from your favorite skills to your least favorite skills or favorite activities, or updates you liked and didn't like where you need to rank them. It's very interesting to fill in, and there are a lot of interesting topics we will discuss in this video. But before we do so, I want to clarify one thing. This survey is not binding. It's not like if 20,000 people voted on a leagues to come to RuneScape 3, that means that we will 100% guaranteed get leagues. It's more so for Jagex to understand what type of updates we want in the future, and then they will explore if it's actually viable to do or if it's something they want to do as a team. So I just want to throw that out there because I don't want to get anyone any ideas that, oh, if we all fill in X subject, like plugins for example, we 100% will get plugins. That's not the case, but it's fun to discuss and show you some of my highlights from the survey in this video. Leave a like on the video if you do enjoy it. Let me know in the comment section down below what you want to see. Subscribe if you're new, and let's get into it. So obviously there are many discussions to be had about all these various topics, but I just put my highlights in this one because I think these ones are some of the most interesting ones, like PvP. There were scarily a lot of questions about PvP, about revitalization of player versus player combat and all that type of stuff. And I wanted to kick off this video with that, as I think that is something that doesn't need any attention. I think that is a station that we've passed as RuneScape 3, mainly because PvP was very poorly handled with EOC, pretty much dying instantly due to the way the damage works. Of course, it was still possible, but with modern power creep, to make PvP work, you already have to make certain circumstances to have it function properly, like increased health or decreased damage in any way, shape or form in controlled environments for player versus player. And sure, there are things like player versus player minigames that could be revitalized, something like Bounty Hunter or something like a Castle Wars minigame. But then again, even in old school RuneScape, they have major issues trying to keep PvP alive, and it gets, I would say in old school there's a lot of things that happen to PvP, especially in the wilderness, which we don't have anymore in RuneScape 3. Well, we do, but you need to opt in, which I think is better, and as long as people stay opt out, then it won't be the case. But in old school RuneScape, there are a lot of things that will draw you into the wilderness that feel very made, like very man-made, kind of like put there so that people will go in there that don't really want to be in there, but that feel like they have to be in there. And yet, like, a great example is Rogue's Chest. I do Rogue's Chest there. It's one of the best thieving experiences in an hour. I get a buttload of supplies. I risk absolutely nothing. And if I die, I don't care because I'm getting good experience rates, right? And it's something that just, to me, feels bad. And I know people will come and say, like, oh yeah, you know the risk going into wilderness. I know. If I lose stuff, I'm okay with that. Like, that's fine. But it just feels so forced, in my opinion, with many updates. Like, for example, you can't go into caves anymore to escape people because, I don't know, it's too difficult for PKers, or there's a delay on teleporting in certain places. And it's all like these things that just feel so forced to make PvP work or make it more engaged for PvPers. Don't get me wrong, I think PvPers should get updates, but there's just a fine line there, and I personally don't know where that is. And that's already one issue. And if you introduce it to RuneScape 3 again, let's be honest, it will probably be used to stake again, because people love staking. Because if there's nothing, if you can put money on the line in any way, shape or form, even if it's just trading between players or like a third person, which also now happens in old school RuneScape, it will introduce gambling again into the game. And there's so many negatives to it that I think it's just a kind of worms you don't want to open. I do feel bad for everyone who does enjoy PvP in RuneScape 3, as I do think that arguably they deserve some type of update and love, but I just think it's too difficult to make it work, and it will just be so stressful to actually make it work, as in the competitive game, as in old school RuneScape of RuneScape 3. it's already a struggle to make it work and keep it alive, that I just think it's something RuneScape 3 should not even think about touching. One thing that I do think they need to touch upon is a clan update, as I think clans in RuneScape are very clunky, tedious, annoying. Like, the capping system is interesting, but then again, it's also very boring to do. It takes quite a lot of time, and the bigger your clan gets, or the higher level your citadel gets, the longer it takes for you to cap, and it's just not fun. Like, let's be honest, it's just not a fun system. If it was made better, it wouldn't be that bad, because I do like the idea of it, but the current implementation sucks. Plus, there are so many clan features that are missing in the game overall, which unfortunately I can't really speak upon because I'm not really big into clans. I do have a clan, but we're just a very small, humble clan that the Citadel keeps on closing on, which is also something that I think just feels bad to just, you know, keep on pushing people to go there. And I know that a lot of clans do like giveaways so that people actually go there, and it's just a whole mess. Like, I think if you are in a clan, it shouldn't be a chore to be in there, which to me and to many other people, it does feel like it, kind of. A clan should just be a fun place where, you know, you can run competitions within and, you know, have a nice spot to hang out in, or you can do some skilling there with your clan. Actual skilling that's worth doing instead of forced skilling because you need to cap. And I think there's a lot of potential for it, and there were quite a few questions about clans that unfortunately didn't go in too much detail, but I'm happy they tackled it on a fundamental level, as it's something that really needs to be updated, and I generally think that they are aware of it, as people have been talking about it for a long time. Something else that people have been talking about for a long time are limited time game modes, like a leagues. If you don't know what leagues is in old school RuneScape, it is something I highly recommend you check out when it rolls around again, which probably be somewhere next year. It's pretty much playing RuneScape on absolute steroids. There are many setups for leagues, but I will give the last league as an example. You pretty much started in the regular area of like Lumbridge, Varrock, whatever, and then you had the Karamja area as well. And with every task you do on a task list that they made, which is very extensive, it's things like dance in the graveyard, to slay a goblin, to make a cake, to things like get a fire cape, like more difficult challenges. Depending on how difficult the challenge is, you get more points for it, and these league points can be spent eventually on unlocking new areas. But also, if you do a certain amount of tasks, you can unlock a new relic. Sorry, it's actually the other way around. And a relic pretty much gives you a buff. For example, the first relic in old school RuneScape, obviously this makes sense, you wouldn't be able to fail thieving at all, and you would automatically thieve like we already do, and you would get Silverhawk boots pretty much, and you would get passive agility experience. But there was also another one where you can smith an entire inventory of stuff in one game tick, so in 0.6 seconds, or craft everything in 0.6 seconds. And it's just RuneScape on absolute steroids. And later on, for example, there was one thing that gave you unlimited money when in shops. So everything in the shop was free. But the flip side of it, because you need to choose between two of them, is an item that notes everything. Pretty much magic note paper for everything that is infinite. And obviously these things need to be tweaked for RuneScape 3, as we have things like magic note paper, or even like the Graves of the Elves, and all that kind of stuff, and Silverhawk boots, of course. But it's just playing RuneScape on steroids, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a competition thing where also you can be in certain tiers, so you get like a cosmetic for it, which is a trophy that you can hold into the main game, and you can also get points in the main game where you can go into a shop and buy all these cosmetics. It's just a lot of fun. It's like 3 weeks of RuneScape fun, and just dopamine after dopamine after dopamine. The leagues usually last like 2 months, but on average I think people play it for like 2 to 3 weeks, and it's just fun. Like, it's a nice switch up from your monotonous grind of just trying to level up your account and grinding out drops or grinding out levels or whatever. It's just something fun, and I think could really bring RuneScape 3 together. It's great for content, both for me to make, but also for you guys to watch, as there's so many things to be done. But also, it could bring in some players that have, you know, not played RuneScape in a while. I mean, especially even old school players that love leagues, they might actually try out RuneScape 3, as you already saw that with Fresh Start Worlds, where actually quite a lot of old school players tried RuneScape 3 because of it, because of like the boost and buffs it gave. think about that. Think about Fresh Out Worlds on steroids and not with bonds and that kind of stuff and transferring over to the main account. And that pretty much is leaks. And I think that is something that I would love to see. And lastly, I want to talk about something that I think is something we need. Like just generally something we need. And I've seen a lot of misconceptions about on Twitter. And those are plugins. Plugins are slightly controversial, but they are very popular in old school RuneScape. If you are somehow not aware of what RuneLite is pretty much a client that is approved by Jagex with plugins. And plugins are things like entity highlighters, the thing we got with high contrast mode, but then you can individually highlight things. It's helpers for certain types of minigames where certain types of information are better displayed in boxes, or you get like a notification when the phase is ending, for example, or something specific is happening, or when you go AFK. Pretty much what Alt 1 is, if you've used it, but on absolute steroids. And there is mainly just quality of life features there. And I think that's where a big misunderstanding comes from, as RuneLite used to have a lot of features where you would just be told what to do. For example, in Pyramid Plunder, you have to find the correct door to go to, and RuneLite would highlight the correct door every single time because they can see which one it is, right? Like within the code of RuneScape. Things like that are no longer allowed anymore. All of it is just, helpers and just better indicators, and just pretty much any quality of life that you might want in RuneScape is most likely a plugin. And even funny things like I have a plugin where instead of just opening a door, I kick in a door, right? Or there are plugins that can change your interface style to like the old school style. There's one that is completely wheat based, like wheat themed, which I think is funny. And there's so many things that plugins can offer, and why I think it is great besides just adding convenience. Like imagine getting Quest Helper, which is pretty much a guide within the game as everything is highlighted that you need to click on, which to a lot of people it's like, oh yeah, that's cheating. But brother, you're using a guide on the wiki. If you're watching this video and you don't use guides for all your quests, not just the new ones because usually they don't have one, if you don't use guides for all your quests, then you are allowed to make that statement. But if you use a guide on the wiki, I don't think you're allowed to, as it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that you either need to Alt-Tab to open it or look onto your different screen to see where you're going and what you're doing and what you need to click, etc. And a Quest Helper just tells you that in-game and highlights that in-game. It's real convenient and it's amazing. And it makes questing so much less of a chore for so many people. And that's a great thing. But I think the biggest benefactor from a plugin system is Jagex themselves, as plugins fix a lot of accessibility issues and regular issues like quality of life issues that then Jagex don't need to fix. Like there are a lot of things that we want, like for example tile markers is something I see a lot in RuneScape 3 players, that it would be nice to have something like that. Or individually tagging things, thankfully we got the high contrast mode for it now, but still individual tagging things, or like an actual implemented clue helper that works with all interface scalings on Windows, for example. These are all things that we want. Like we use Alt 1, right? And these are all features that Jagex could possibly implement, but takes a lot of development time. And if you can save on a lot of quality of life features that would otherwise take up dev time because of a plugin, then that means that those hours of development time can be used on bigger and better updates, right? Something like a high contrast mode needs to be a fundamental feature in RuneScape. The one that we got last week, right? That needs to be a fundamental feature in RuneScape, and it should not be a plugin. And that's something you see in old school RuneScape. Because it's a plugin, it's not a fundamental feature. Like interface scaling, for example, is actually a plugin, which is absolutely crazy. And that makes it so that, for example, I don't play RuneLite or old school RuneScape whenever there's a new update because RuneLite hasn't updated yet. And what I'm trying to say here is like, it already shows that Jagex will not implement these features if it was for plugins. So you could also argue like, okay, accessibility features always need to be in there and shouldn't come from plugins. But it is also nice at the same time that it comes from plugins, because it comes a lot quicker and in a lot more smaller chunks and little details. And yet again, let me clarify, accessibility stuff like high contrast mode should be a fundamental feature and should not be a plugin. But there are also a lot of quality of life things, like being able to switch your interact button. For example, if you left click something, instead of crafting it, you use it or you drop it or whatever. Just make things a little bit more convenient. And that is something that Jagex could surely implement, but if they don't have to, they can make a new boss or something else. And I think that is something that is way more interesting for a lot of people than having all these like changes to quality of life. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. In the comment section down below, I already said that. Subscribe if you do, like the video if you did enjoy it, and my name's Chevalric, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.